in Oakland? What are the A's going to do? What are the Giants doing? They're bringing up Luis Matos today, but let's talk some baseball. We'll talk a little football with our main man. It's been a while. Chris Rose, John Boy Media, NFL Network. You see him all over the place. The Chris Rose Rotation Podcast, of course. Battle Bots, everything. He does it all. I don't even know when he gets sleep. Chris, good morning, man. Welcome back to the Roast with Bonte Hill, Joe Shashinu Butcher. How you been, man?
I'm doing great, guys. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. I do want Shane Bieber from those Guardians, so we'll talk about him in a second. I would love to have him in that Giants rotation. I got a man crush on him. But just let's start with the story of the day in the world of baseball. That's what happened yesterday at the Oakland Coliseum with the reverse boycott. You had over 27,700 fans at the Coliseum yesterday. A little disappointing they didn't get to 30, but how can you blame them after what this ownership group has done to this fan base here? What was your thoughts on the boycott, and what's your thoughts on just John Fisher basically getting a handout from the state of Nevada after they passed another ruling there to where he could get $380 million and get the free rent, build a stadium on the Strip, and get a loan?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with what transpired last night. I mean, I loved it. I think it shows the power of people when they want to get together, particularly via social media, that they can have their voices heard. They can make a stance. The end game isn't going to finish with the story that the people in the Bay Area want, unfortunately. It's just not. But I don't think that's what last night was about. I think it was part therapeutic, so that people of kind of a like-minded will when it comes to their favorite baseball team can gather, whether that's sharing stories or just say, hey, for one more great time, let's try and fill this place to the best of our abilities. And I thought it was great. I thought, going silent and then having a raucous crowd with chanting, it was orchestrated beautifully. Do I think that it made any sort of impact on John Fisher whatsoever? No, I don't. I don't know him, so I can't say what type of person he is, but I can tell you this, that, the dude was born on third base, and he doesn't face the media, and he doesn't take questions about this stuff, and he'll just continue to hide in his perch. And the league office won't bat an eye. They just won't. None of the highlights were on their league-owned network last night. They didn't talk about it. All they said was, hey, the A's won their 7th straight game 2-1, and they showed the highlights. They did not show it about the protesting. They did not talk about the protesting. Nothing.
So, Chris, is your read on that? That because I've come to the realization, like, the NFL wanted to be in Vegas, right? So Jerry Jones made that happen. Major League Baseball wants to be in Vegas, and they just have no problem with John Fisher being that guy who's running that team. Is that how you're boiling it down? Is that too simplistic?
No, it's not, because who's going to stop him? I mean, are any of the other 29 owners going to be like, hey, John, hold on here. This might not be best for you or our sport moving forward. Do you know why they're not going to do it? Because one day it might be them. And that's what it comes down to, unfortunately, is that at the end of the day, they don't want to stop somebody else from doing something that, most of them aren't going to have to travel down this road, but on the slight chance that they might have to. And what's the league going to do? I mean, they don't have the ability to look 10 years down the road. They can barely make it 2 feet in front of their face sometimes. So they're not going to do that. I mean, do I think that Vegas is a better home than the Bay Area for them? I don't. It's a smallish market. Listen, if you want to sell Vegas to an NFL fan, it's really easy.
Right.
Hey, guys, our NFL team's going out there for the first time in 3 years. Let's make a weekend out of it. Great. Hey, let's go check out our baseball team on the road. And no, I'm busy that weekend. That's not as appealing. So if that's what you're trying to do, I'm just not so sure it's going to work.
Chris, do you believe the Bay Area still could house 2 baseball teams, Major League Baseball teams?
Do I think what? I'm sorry.
Do you think that the Bay Area can house 2 Major League Baseball teams? Meaning, basically, can you still support the A's and Giants in one market?
Good question. Well, we only have it in 2 other cities, right? Chicago and New York.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
L.A.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., what is that? 45 minutes apart. You got the massive network out there.
They've been fighting.
Yeah, but that's been kind of a holy mess, right?
Exactly.
It has.
So, I think so. The problem is, having lived in I'm not a native Californian, right? I'm from Ohio.
Right.
I've lived out here for over 20 years. I've been in the sports world, but I understand how tough it is to get stadium measures passed out here. It's just not easy, right? I mean, that's why San Francisco built with private money. And it just doesn't happen frequently. And so, how long have the A's been fighting to get a new stadium? It just feels like forever.
Forever, man.
And it's hard to get owners and politicians and communities all pulling on the same rope. It just is. So it's not so much the support of the team as getting the most important part of this equation done, which would be a new stadium, a new community development. That's the area where I don't have faith, because I don't have faith. Unfortunately, I just don't have faith in political leadership these days.
Nor do I. We're in the same boat there. It's interesting. We all acknowledge that, like, you have to have the financing and you have to have the revenue to be able to pencil these things. Joe Lacob can't afford in basketball $200 million in luxury tax if he didn't have the right revenue coming through with the fans and the television and the gate and everything that goes on. So I don't want to be naive to the money. But do owners owe anything to the community? Like, do you get where I'm going with this? Like,
absolutely. No, it's a great question, because when you own a sports team, and I've made this point very clear in my thought process over the years, it is unlike owning any other business. I don't go to a Walmart and go buy a Walmart jersey. I'm not running. I'm not going to a game tonight wearing a shirt that says I support Team Walmart.
Right.
Because it's just not in my heart. But when you're born into a community, like, take my family, for instance. We have lived and breathed Cleveland sports. All of our kids are Cleveland sports fanatics, even though one brother grew up, raised his family in New York. Two of us raised our families in L.A. All they do is root for Cleveland sports. Why is that? Because that's where our heart is. That's where our emotions are. When the Cavs won the title, sorry guys, over the Warriors in 2016.
It's all good.
I mean, it was a monumental event in the life of the Rose family. So owners have to understand what you're doing when you're pulling on the emotional heartstrings of the people you're asking to empty their wallets for your behalf. It's why I think it should be mandatory that ownership in all sports meet with the media minimum of twice a year.
Ooh, absolutely.
Once at the beginning of the season, once at the end of the season.
I like that.
Stop hiding in your palatial estates. Stop having the commissioners take bullets for you. Go act like adults. Go answer some questions.
Wow.
And I think you should want to do that. People can yell and say whatever they want about Steve Cohen of the Mets. He's fairly accessible.
Yes.
On Twitter.
Perfect human being. He is not a perfect human being, and I understand that. But at the same time, at least you feel like he's available if you're a Mets fan, right?
Right. Wow.
I don't know how hard it is. Why it's so hard for some of these. Don't get me started.
Well, I want to ask you about that. We're talking to Chris Rose, John Boy Media, NFL Network, friend of the program here at 95.7 The Game on the Morning Roast. That's the thing. What do other owners feel about John Fisher? Because we're here in the Bay Area. I had no idea what he looked like until I saw him sitting courtside at the Sacramento Kings game this past season next to Vivek Ranadive. And I was like, oh, that's what John Fisher looks like? What do other owners in baseball, what are they seeing behind the scenes or other CEOs about John Fisher, who, to your point, has not come out and talked to the fans? Instead, he's had his carnival barker, Dave Cavill, sit here and lie to the fans and talk about being rooted in Oakland. John Fisher, what's the perception in the circle of baseball, in those baseball circles, Chris?
I don't think they care. I don't think the other owners care. like I said, I just think they sit there and they say, well, I'm not going to ruffle any feathers up there in Oakland because I don't want to get on the record and have the fans use that against me somewhere down the line, saying, hey, well, hold on. You went to bat for the Oakland A's, but now you're doing this in our city. What, that's what they're fearful of. They are afraid of being held to a certain standard once they get on the record. So you won't hear a peep. You won't hear a peep about it. So they might, let's say at an owners meeting that happens, if somebody gets asked, well, what are your thoughts? Do you feel badly for the fans in Oakland? They're going to say, yeah, I do, and I do. And that's all they're going to say. They don't care. They just, to them, they want to know what it means, dollars and cents, to them at the end of the day. That's all they care about.
Chris, working with the NFL like you did for their network, you have a good feel. Like it feels equitable. It feels very balanced across the league. Like Jacksonville feels like they have a similar arsenal of maybe not revenue per se, but they have the amount of money that's equal. The salary caps feel equal. The television deals are all divided up amongst the entire teams, and they have the same amount of draft picks and stuff. I'm looking around the baseball landscape this year, and it truly feels very America-like, the haves and the have-nots. And there are layers to it. And yes, there are successful outliers like Tampa Bay, but you see teams like the struggling teams even, the Mets and the Padres, their payrolls are through the roof. And I feel like the business of baseball is colliding this year unlike any other that I can remember, with all of the regional network stuff that's going on and bankruptcy and everything like that. I don't know. I feel like we're hitting an inflection point when it comes to money. Am I misreading that?
No, you're not misreading it. I mean, part of that has been going on for decades. I mean, that's nothing new, the haves and the have-nots. It's just, they did put in revenue sharing, right? I don't remember exactly what year that they tapped into it to seemingly make it more equitable. But once again, it always feels like that's never truthful. Like, the dollars that you get in, you're supposed to put back into the team. Like, have we ever really found that? Do we ever follow that trail of money, that the money that the Yankees and the Mets put back into the coffer? Are the Kansas City Royals and Cleveland Guardians really utilizing it on their teams, or are they just pocketing it? So, we don't know about that aspect. You brought up something interesting that I think fans are going to have to pay attention to here in the near future, which is with these regional deals crashing around us. And there are now 16 teams that still have Bally's carrying their names, a company that's in bankruptcy. The Padres obviously just got rid of Bally's, and there's going to be a few more that it happens to, in my estimation, this baseball season. Is that our team's going to cry poor? Are they going to say, hey, listen, we don't have the revenue from Bally's that we have had in years past? We can't spend it on good players. So are some middle-tier players going to get squeezed out of millions of dollars? I think that's going to happen. Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, still going to get their top dollar. But the guys who've been really good players, who are thinking they're going to get a $100 million contract, are not going to. And I imagine this is going to come to a head in a few years when the agreement is up between the players and ownership. But it's just something to watch why your favorite team might not be spending in the offseason.
Interesting stuff there. Chris, before we get you out, what could a package look like for Shane Bieber? I'm throwing out, Jock Peterson, Joey Bart, a couple prospects. As it is Luis Matos Day here in San Francisco. Luis Matos is coming up to the show, baby. We're feeling good about the Giants right now. Now all we need is Shane Bieber and Marcus Stroman, and I'm locked in on Bieber. So what's going to take the pride out of Cleveland, Chris?
Yeah, so Bieber's an interesting guy. Still has a year and a half of control left. Has been very healthy throughout his career. Major velocity dip on his fastball, but he's still getting guys out with stuff. Throws like 55% sliders. He had a great start the other day against Houston, where I think he struck out 9 or 10. He's been like hovering around 4 or 5 strikeouts a game, which is not good enough. So I don't know if a team like the Giants can match what Cleveland wants for Bieber, because think they're just going to give him away because they could always trade him in the offseason too. So, and that one's a dicey one. I don't know if they're going to. That's a really tough one because he's a guy that can opt out of the last year of his contract. And he's pitching great. He's a dude that would really fit out there.
No doubt.
I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, no, they tried to sign him in the offseason as Luis Matos comes up. The Giants will play a better 5 straight road wins. They'll go for the sweep today in St. Louis. But, Chris, we got to run. We'll talk to you. We'll catch up later in the season around the deadline and, of course, football season when you're tapped in with that. We got a lot to talk about here when it comes to the quarterbacks out here in San Francisco for the 7th straight year, Chris. Can't get it right. Quarterback. Jeez, we feel like the Cleveland Browns now.
No. Will you stop that?
All right, I will stop that. I had to. I had to get the shot it back in after the finals recall. You brought up the 2016 finals. I apologize.
See you, buddy.
When we go 1-3 against you guys? Come on now.
I know. And Kevin Durant was a Warrior 2 weeks later, so I think we got past that one really quickly.
See you, buddy.
All right, Chris.
All right, take care, guys.
Anytime. Chris Rose here. And I got something